Austin apparently pushes Karmelo in an attempt to get Karmelo to move along. At this point, Karmelo retrieves a knife and stabs Austin. Now, we know that this confrontation was caught on video that was captured by the press box camera at the stadium.
You're already used to the headlines, indictments, motions, asset freezes, but then something shifts. A new headline drops, and this one doesn't come from the prosecution. It comes from the Metcalf family's legal team, and it changes everything. Karmelo Anthony's parents officially charged with first-degree murder following newly submitted evidence from the Metcalf family's attorneys. That detail hits different because for months, people whispered the case was stalling, that prosecutors didn't have enough, that the Anthony family might walk. But now the Metcalfs have done what the state couldn't. They forced the system to move. And the evidence? It's not just words, it's footage. Leaked surveillance video, silent, grainy, and time-stamped, just 24 hours before the stabbing, shows Karmelo's father meeting privately in the back parking lot of a supply store. He's seen handing over a thick envelope to a man wearing gloves. No words, no confrontation, just an exchange, 15 seconds, then gone. But that's not the damning part. The man receiving the envelope? He's now been identified as the same individual whose fingerprints were lifted off the weapon used to kill Austin Metcalf. That's what flipped the case. The Metcalf attorneys submitted the footage along with a signed affidavit from a former employee at the store who claims they were instructed not to report the cameras being down that day. But one backup drive was never wiped, and that's where the clip came from. Now the district attorney has no choice but to act. This isn't speculation anymore. It's action, it's connection, it's motive, and it was brought forward by the same family still waking up every day to silence in Austin's room. So ask yourself, if this evidence didn't mean anything, why did someone try so hard to bury it? You start digging into the court filings, trying to understand just how deep this new evidence goes. The surveillance clip is just the tip of the iceberg. What the Metcalf legal team submitted alongside it changes the tone of the entire case. A phone record log and a decrypted message thread between Karmelo's parents and an unnamed intermediary. The records show a call placed exactly 11 minutes after the envelope handoff. The number used? A prepaid burner phone. The destination? A second burner number, traced by investigators to the same vicinity where Austin Metcalf's body was found less than 24 hours later. But what truly makes the room go silent in court is the message that followed. Clock's ticking. Let's finish this. Prosecutors say that message was recovered from a secure messaging app used by the Anthony family's financial consultant, an app that auto-deletes unless screen captured. The only reason it survived? A backup sync tied to a cloud account no one realized was still active. This wasn't carelessness, this was coordination. And now the prosecution is fully on board with the Metcalfs, labeling the footage and phone logs compelling proof of premeditated involvement. Not just suspicion, not just guilt by association, a plan. Meanwhile, the Metcalfs sit in silence, watching it all unfold. Their attorney tells reporters outside the courthouse, this isn't about revenge, it's about truth. They didn't just lose a son, they watched the people responsible try to bury the evidence along with him. And suddenly, the public's attention shifts, because this is no longer about legal loopholes or technicalities. It's about a family that tried to hide behind silence, and the other family that refused to let them. You notice it's not just the courtroom watching anymore, it's the country. Cable news, podcasts, online breakdowns. The footage and call logs released by the Metcalf attorneys have turned a slow-burning case into a national firestorm. But what everyone's talking about now isn't just the envelope or the burner phones, it's the pattern. Because new documents show this wasn't a one-time meeting. The Metcalf legal team uncovered a series of license plate reads from traffic cameras around the city, each one placing Karmelo's father in the exact same area as the alleged weapons supplier 4 separate times in the 2 weeks leading up to Austin's murder. 4 meetings, no phone records, no bank trail. But then the Metcalfs released the final piece, an ATM security photo. In it, Karmelo's mother stands at a machine, withdrawing the exact amount of cash investigators' estimate was in the envelope. Date and time? Just 1 hour before the parking lot handoff. This wasn't grief. This was choreography. The defense scrambles to shift the narrative. They argue the footage is misleading, the phone records circumstantial, and the money inconclusive. But the court isn't buying it, and neither is the public. Because while the Anthony legal team claims they're being targeted unfairly, the Metcalfs haven't missed a step. They're not leaking rumors. They're submitting evidence, time-stamped, verified, and locked in the chain of custody. And through all this, not once have they asked for money. Not once have they spoken in anger. Only truth, only accountability. Because for them, this isn't about winning. It's about making sure no one ever forgets who Austin Metcalf was or what it cost to get this far. And when the truth finally breaks through, no family name is strong enough to hold it back. You watch the trial footage like it's a slow unraveling, because that's exactly what it is. Every frame, every timestamp, every quiet detail the Anthony family hoped would stay buried is now lighting up the courtroom screen. But nothing hits harder than what happens next. The prosecution calls a surprise witness, an ex-security contractor who previously worked at the Anthony estate. No media leaks, no prior mention, just a man in a blazer stepping to the stand and swearing in under oath. What he says is short but explosive. He testifies that 2 weeks before the stabbing, he overheard a tense conversation between Karmelo's parents, arguing about the fallout and making sure it doesn't trace back to us. He claims they mentioned the name Metcalf more than once, and when he asked a supervisor about it the next day, he was let go. No warning, no paperwork, just dismissed. The defense immediately objects, says it's hearsay, says he's disgruntled. But then the Metcalfs legal team drops the hammer. An HR email confirming the man was terminated the morning after logging a workplace complaint against Karmelo's father. It's a setup the courtroom wasn't ready for. The media coverage explodes again, and this time, even neutral commentators begin shifting their tone from cautious to convinced. You glance back at the Metcalf family in the courtroom. No reaction. They've heard it all before, just never this loud. But now, every piece they've gathered is stacking the weight exactly where it belongs. And the Anthony name? It's starting to crack. Because when you plan something in whispers, you better pray no one's close enough to hear and brave enough to remember. You open your phone and scroll through a wave of headlines. But it's not just media coverage now. It's protest flyers, hashtags, petition links. The Metcalf family has become the face of a growing public reckoning, and the Anthony family, the symbol of a system people think protects wealth over justice. Outside the courthouse, demonstrators gather. Some hold photos of Austin Metcalf. Others carry signs that read, "Truth has no price tag," and "No more silence behind gates." But it's not just noise, it's pressure. Because this morning, a federal investigator confirmed that new subpoenas have been issued, not just for the Anthonys, but for their financial advisor, private security chief, and 2 longtime business associates. And according to leaked transcripts, all 3 may have had access to key documents now considered missing from the estate's original investigation. That detail hits harder than anything so far. This isn't just a case of circumstantial evidence piling up. This is obstruction, possibly conspiracy. And suddenly, the focus shifts from what happened to who helped keep it quiet. Inside the courtroom, the Metcalf family sits quietly. No cameras, no applause, just exhaustion carved into their faces. But what you notice most is the father, Austin's dad. His hands stay folded the entire time until the prosecution plays the audio from a recovered voicemail. You barely hear it. It's muffled, almost whispered. "We do this right. It won't come back to us." That one line takes the oxygen out of the room. And when the clip ends, no one speaks. Because some truths don't need explanation. They just need someone strong enough to bring them into the light. You thought the case had peaked, that the surveillance footage, burner phones, and secret conversations were the extent of the damage. But then you see it, filed quietly in the system at 6:43 a.m. A motion from the prosecution titled, "Intent to pursue conspiracy charges pending cross-examination." That phrase shifts the entire temperature, because it signals one thing clearly. They don't think Karmelo Anthony's parents were just involved. They think they coordinated it. And the catalyst? A final piece of evidence turned over by the Metcalf family's legal team, an old iPad. It belonged to Austin, found in his closet, never wiped. It wasn't even locked. But what's inside changes everything. A screenshot, one image, a message from an unknown number, saved in a folder titled "Just in Case." It reads, "Don't run your mouth. They already paid." The timestamp? 4 days before Austin was killed. And now prosecutors believe Austin may have been threatened, possibly warned not to expose something that tied back to Karmelo's parents. Suddenly, the entire narrative shifts again. It's no longer just about aftermath. It's about prevention. What did Austin know? What was he going to say? Who was afraid of him speaking? In court, the Metcalf family breaks for the first time. Austin's mother stands and walks out during the reading of the message. She doesn't scream. She doesn't cry. She just leaves because there's nothing left to hear. She knew her son was in trouble. She just didn't know how far the silence went. And now the entire case feels different, more deliberate, more dangerous. Because when a victim leaves behind proof that they were silenced, justice stops being an idea and becomes a clock. You step back from it all. The footage, the text threads, the burner calls, the threats, the lies, and what you're left with isn't just a murder case. It's a blueprint of how far people will go when they think their name can shield them. And that's what makes this case different. Because Karmelo Anthony's parents didn't just try to avoid responsibility. They tried to erase the trail, and they almost did. But what they didn't count on was the Metcalf family refusing to stay silent, refusing to settle, refusing to be buried beneath paperwork, bank transfers, and courtroom delays. They fought back with receipts, with camera logs, with timestamps, with Austin's old iPad, with fragments of truth most families wouldn't even know how to find. And now, that truth has pushed the case beyond just murder. It's bigger now. Conspiracy, obstruction, financial tampering, possibly witness intimidation. The charges are growing. The courtroom is full. The headlines won't stop. But behind it all, there's still a quiet pain that won't go away. Because the Metcalfs didn't want to become warriors. They just wanted their son to come home. And they'll never get that. But maybe, just maybe, they'll get something else. Justice, not just for Austin, but for every family who's ever been told their grief isn't enough to matter, that wealth can't be touched, that silence wins. And in the final moment of the hearing, you look at Karmelo's parents, frozen, still, surrounded by everything they built to protect themselves. None of it works now, because the truth is louder than money. And when the evidence survives longer than the lies, you don't walk away from that. You face it.